Well, we're here at Little Creek Farm, the Nature Conservancy sustainable grazing operation, and as part of that, we're going to be looking at dividing this 180-acre pasture into about 12 different paddocks. They're going to be set up. Some are going to maintain their cool season grass state. Some of them are going to be interseeded with some native warm season grasses and interseeded into that. And then there's other parts of these paddocks that are going to be restored to prairie. Those cows are going to rotate on about a every 2-week basis throughout that paddock system. As we're standing here today, I have with myself Garrett and I have Kenton. They're both here from the Harrison County Soil and Water District as well as NRCS today. And as part of this, we've been collaborating with them, not only because we received an award through the Conservation Innovation Grant through USDA, but also because they are a local partner. And there's a lot of efforts that center around conservation and ranching in particular that they do cost share practices on. You know, as we're standing here today and we just walked out in here doing a video shoot for this field day, one of the things you can look down here below and you can see is we actually have cows that have directly access to the pond. As part of the efforts that we're going to be doing out here is we're going to be doing some exclusion fencing on site to keep the cattle out of not only the stream and water features there, but also these ponds. And as part of this effort, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be excluding them from some of those sensitive areas and keeping the cattle out of those locations and out feeding in the pasture. And we're going to be setting up some alternative water here on site. But as part of this, we wanted to make sure that producers in Missouri, especially, you know, those here in Northwest Missouri, know that if they live in Harrison County, on where that they can actually go and find out what practices that they want to do on their own lands, where the funding is that they can go to and the right questions to ask. So I know I've been making some various conversations back and forth on email and then as well as on site with Garrett as we were looking at setting up the paddocks and what that looked like, as well as alternative water out here on site. But you know, on many of the producers that come or ranchers that come into your door, what are some things within their own land that they can look to do that NRCS cost shares on?
Well, first off, just like you, Kent, you came in or you contacted us, and then we made a field visit and see what your research concerns were, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
So we came out here, we noticed the cows in the pond, we noticed water, we know, well, if you look way across where it's mob graze, it's down, which we like to have it around 6 to 8 inches tall when you're moving, kind of like take half, leave half.
Absolutely.
So when we come out here, we look at a few things like that and where you want to put your water lines, because we design those and we design the paddocks.
Yep.
And we also talked about seeding.
That's correct.
We came up with some seeding sheets so you know how many pounds of seed to put on each paddock, if you want to drill, if you want to broadcast. So we do a lot of that throughout the contract period, or if you want help, if you want the district to come out, we work together. And every field office is different, so everybody has their own ways.
And I know out here, as we look at this site, you know, people might look at it and say, wow, you know, we have the Nature Conservancy, they have a grazing operation, and you know, we have an individual that's Ryan Cox that's bringing cattle here on site, who's a new and beginning rancher, would classify as that. And someone looks down, they see the cows in the water feature there. You know, we're no different than many other ranchers around here. Would it be easy enough for the Nature Conservancy to say, you know what, we're just going to shut off this to grazing, and we're going to come out here and we're going to put in all these right practices that we've talked about, you know, the alternative watering sources, the revegetating some of this stuff. Could we have went in and done that and said, we're not going to do anything over the next 3 years besides getting this up and functional? Absolutely, we could have done that. But what we wanted to demonstrate here on this particular site, we are in a working landscape. And we want to make sure on this particular site that is our sustainable grazing operation, just like you talked about the mob or flash grazing that happened on that side isn't ideal to what we would want to see. The idea as we year by year, we start diversifying these paddocks. You know, here this fall, we're going to be putting in the alternate water source. In about 2 weeks, we're going to be doing the exclusion fencing here on site. As we look at this as a working landscape, we wanted to replicate what the average rancher or landowner in this area could do. Right. We wanted to make sure to piecemeal it time by time. We're going to be restoring, you know, 2 to 3 paddocks a year. You know, we're going to be doing the first one late this fall or early next spring on that restoration effort. And obviously the work that, you know, we've done together was setting up on where the water's going to look like. And initially when I came into looking at this, and I had the idea that, well, you know, I would just end up and we would have gravity fed our pipes out of these ponds that we have, and then that 1 point source would be where the cattle would drink of. Then in talking with you guys, we started looking at you know, pipe diameter. Hey, are we going to pump out of ponds to some other location? But also rural water was a big thing, and you in stressing that rural water, Garrett, what was the biggest importance on stressing that rural water source? Because when I look out here, if we had a lot less rain and the ponds lowered, right, I'm not going to have a whole lot of water out here for these cows, since we're limiting the access they have to the stream.
Exactly. And see, you don't want to tie yourself to one thing. You want to give yourself options, just like the paddocks. You know, maybe you don't want to graze over hill, but over hill because you're going to work your cows in a couple of days.
Yep.
You know, you want to give yourself a lot of options, just like the grass. Do I want cool season? Do I want warm season? Do I want some natives in it? What type? I mean, there's a lot of time management to go in there. How you want to operate, I guess, is the main concern. How Ryan Cox will operate this.
Correct. So typically on something for, say, alternative watering, perhaps it is some paddock fencing and things like that. What are some of the cost shareable practices, maybe not necessarily the number, but the percent or cost share rate that a producer may be able to utilize? I know there's some programs they can come into your office, they could sign up for, and maybe they can rank out sooner than others. Others, they need to come in, and there's a ranking process that might take, you know, 8 months to a year, you know, to go through that ranking process to get in. So, you know, some of the things that we're looking at out here on site, and even though the Nature Conservancy is working with some other partners and funding in and of themselves on doing this, obviously there's parts with the paddock division fence. It's being covered through the NRCS, the Conservation Innovation Grant. The corral stuff that we have up there is a piece of it. And we're doing some, you know, stream crossing work and other efforts down in the bottom. But what could people look at seeing on some of these cost shareable rates coming in the door?
Oh, good question. So NRCS offers Equip, which is Environmental Incentive Program.
Okay.
And you come in, you sign up, and then those is the ranking process, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But you're asking, so what can I have or can't have, right? Well, just like we talked about, you can do the fence, you can do pipeline, you can do tanks. We put gravel around the tanks for heavy use because all the cows will go, though. Fencing out ponds. And also through the district has a cost share.
The big difference between the NRCS and the district is NRCS, you come in, you apply for Equip. The more things you do, the higher ranking you get, the more apt you are to get funded. Mm-hmm. So where you was wanting to go on a 3-year plan with this, Equip would have been great to do everything in 3 years. With the state cost share money, which is state funds instead of federal funds, you can come in and you can apply for just one practice. Say you have a stream that has a lot of erosion in it, you want to clean the water quality up, we can fence your stream out as a practice. Well, if you fence your stream out, you probably have pasture on the other side to where you need a crossing. We can kind of piggyback the crossing with the stream. That's the only way we can do a crossing, is if we do a stream exclusion. If you want a grazing system, you can come in and you can sign up for a grazing system. We can put that on up to a 3-year plan, knowing that getting your cross fences and your water tanks and your grass established can be a timely process. Another one, if you decide that you have a pond you don't want the livestock in anymore, we can do a single practice to fence out the livestock from the pond. If you want to take some row crop land and turn it back into grassland, whether it be for hay land or seeding, we can do that as a standalone project.
Roughly, Equip, if you get in, it's around 75% cost share.
Okay.
Unless you're a beginning farmer, undeserved farmer, you roughly get 90% lend. But roughly, it's around 75% cost share on the Equip side.
All right. You know, I know we're sitting here in the Little Creek Farm. It's a piece of the Grand River grasslands, you know, roughly 100,000 acre watershed. We're kind of on the downward side of that watershed here. It goes up into Iowa. But, you know, you talked about some of the conversion. You know, that's one of the biggest things we look at some of these grassland areas. We want to encourage the ranching lifestyle. We want to, you know, we're just wanting that to be done in a sustainable manner that's economically efficient for the producer, number one, because they're not going to do it if it's not. And number two, balance that with not just water quality, but wildlife as well. And I know that's what a lot of practices and programs promoted by the district as well as NRCS here within the county, that's what it's about. You know, you had mentioned, Kenton, about the systems approach. And stacking the different practices together, it's going to allow you to rank out much higher in some of these settings. That's the same thing that we're looking at. The Nature Conservancy is really interested in a systems approach to conservation. And in the working landscape that we're at right now, a systems approach to that is the very things that we're looking at. It's those alternative water sources, so we don't have cows in the ponds, so we don't have cows in the secondary order streams or the mainstream tributaries of some of these creeks and water bodies. It's looking at setting up paddocks or doing some type of rotation so we don't have, you know, real low structure on this grass. You know, obviously, you know, you look in the summer months and you get some of those cows out on, you know, fescue only. You know, by eating that, there's a toxicity level within that's going to, you know, cause the temperatures to rise in those cattle. And that's why we're looking at diversifying some of those things. But also we know the things that we're doing on the upland side of doing the water sources and the paddock divisions and the different vegetation types. We know that that's affecting stuff down the hill and down towards the water course as well. And it's connecting everything together in that systems manner that you were talking about, Kenton.
And also, as a grazer, you got to think about weight gain. So the prescribed grazing, your cattle will look better, heavier. Calves, you will wean off calves. So you got to look at that picture too.
And I know you're a cattle guy yourself, Garrett.
Right.
That you've had that. And so as you look at doing these paddock divisions, we look at doing these interseedings.
Yes.
You know, although you have a little bit up front that you got to do, you know, perhaps there's some out-of-pocket money if you can't get into the programs and doing some of those things. But long-term, as you're looking at, say, this 180-acre piece that we're going to be dividing up into the 12 different paddocks through the dollars that we had received through the Conservation Innovation Grant, that in the long run, by diversifying those things, we're actually going to be able to be better stewards and handle more cattle on that given set of land because of how that they are grazed.
Right, because you're going to have more forage by rotation.
Another thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you start rotating your livestock is the quality of soil, how it's going to improve.
Yes.
If you're not overgrazed, you always have your roots growing properly and the soil health is so much better. If your soil health is so much better, you're going to have the legumes coming on every year more apt without putting more seed down. The diversity of the grass is going to be so much better. You go across the road over there to the prairie where it's never been plowed. The soil health is really good there.
And we got 4 to 5 feet of topsoil in some of that stuff.
If we can get 10 different species of grass coming up every year at different times because we've grazed it, you can have a cool and warm season paddock together. Well, if you have that, your soil health is going to be so much greater too because the biology in your soil is always feeding off of a living plant.
Yep.
So that's another side that people don't realize a lot on too. If you get your soil healthy, you're not going to have to spend the money on the fertilizers or reseeding. Give the grass a break, it's going to come back. You're going to see different times of year, different stuff out there. Instead
of a, you know, corn and bean system, you know, where you're putting the fertilizers on and you're trying to mend that land to produce whatever bushels you are there, we're looking at areas like this and trying to maximize some tonnage, you know, and value of the forage here on this particular side as well, just because it's going to, you know, not only be better for the soil health, which ultimately is going to be acting like a sponge and filter to any of the manure and things that happen here before it gets down into the stream, and acting more like a sponge before it gets there. So it's great to see all those things working together, but it's definitely it's a systems approach to it all, and it's not going to happen overnight. As you do this, there's steps that you can take and plans that you can get into place, and that's where both of you and your organizations that you work for, both the Soil and Water District as well as NRCS, that's where producers can come in with an idea for their particular farm and can start working with the both of you to cater something that's going to be a great fit for their operations, so they can start raising the needle, you know, in a more sustainable manner on their operation.
Right.
Other thing is, if you're not overgrazed, your big range, your erosion's not there, the runoff from your manure's not there. If they get to choose what grass they want to eat, they can potentially lower their body temperatures in the summer.
And that's a big thing on heavily dominated fescue pastures, you know, in the middle of the summer, and that's what they're eating a lot of time. And in this part of the country, there's a lot of fescue, and their temperatures are rising. So why are they getting into the ponds and the streams and the shaded areas? Because their temperatures are so high. As we start to diversify the forages that are out here and they begin to eat, you know, in those summer months, I mean, they don't want to eat the fescue in that summer month. It's not very palatable to them. But if there's some other grasses, such as the native warm season grasses that are out there, and they could forage on those, it's going to be bringing the temperature levels down of those cows. So they're going to be out grazing and doing the very thing of gaining weight and doing the things you want them to do by simply having the right forage out there.
And also, like you guys are doing 12 paddock system, I mean, you don't have to get that, you know, you don't have to go that extreme, I guess I'm saying. You could do 2. I mean, just start slow. You will see a difference.
And that's how this is set up right now. So
Yeah, I mean,
Ryan had turned his cows out here first off in mid-April. He turned them out here, left them here for a month and a half, and then he transitioned them then to the south side, and here just a week ago or so he brought them back to the north side. And you can look out here on, you know, probably the average height out here somewhere around 18 inches, I would guess, on a lot of this vegetation. So like you said, Garrett, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go, we're just looking at an approach of, all right, managing it a little bit different than just kicking cows out on a 200-acre pasture and saying leave them at that spot for the whole time. You know, we're looking at whether it's, you know, whether you move to, you know, having 2 different paddocks, you rotate 2, 3, or 4. You know, we have a neighbor that I know works with you folks and is part of our grassbank project, and they rotate their cattle every day on some of their paddocks. So it's as extreme as you want to take it to meet the results that you want to see on the end of it. And there's a lot of practices and programs in place through the district and NRCS here in Harrison County and all the other counties here within Missouri, that folks can access the dollars to help them in that process. But we wanted to, you know, let the folks know that are looking at this and saying, hey, there are options and ways that you can get some cost share to help you implement these things. Don't look at a particular practice and say, boy, it's going to cost me too much to get some alternative water in place or this and that. If you're looking to move the needle forward and do something that's beneficial for your cattle, beneficial for the environment, there's places and programs that are there to be able to help folks out. If I'm a producer here in Harrison County, how can I get in touch with you? But also, if I'm a producer that's seen this, are thinking about some different practices that might apply to my ranch in and of itself, where do I start? How do I get in contact with somebody at the Soil and Water District level or someone within NRCS in my own particular county?
Well, you just look us up on the web, you know, go NRCS.
And through as they go onto the web, through the USDA or NRCS website, you can go down and find districts and things like that, pick your district and make contact.
Well, it's by
in.
county, it's whatever county you're working in.
Okay.
So, and then you just call us, and anybody would be happy to help.
Excellent.
So,
Well, I appreciate you two gentlemen coming out here today and sharing a little bit about the opportunities that are out there for producers looking to utilize a ranching practice or a conservation practice in some particular way. And everything you do doesn't revolve around ranching. I mean, you guys do stuff with row crop as well. You guys do things that are centered around wildlife. So if someone sees this, contacting your local soil and water district or NRCS professionals would be the thing to do, and see what options are there for you.